When a well-attired man entered a renowned bank to cash a check, he anticipated professionalism, but instead he endured the embarrassment that the bank manager was unaware that the man wasn't just anyone, but the bank's owner. What transpired? Then was everyone in the room. Above the door, a quiet sound was heard. When Darius entered the opulent bank's interior in downtown, the air had a subtle scent of polish and leather, with the quiet business transaction whispers. The tall marble ceiling was dapper, and he carried himself with a fitted navy suit. Calm. He went up to the teller. He was holding the check at the teller, a big one, line. Had a serene expression, nearly expression. An early owl, and was unreadable, but he peered. But Darius didn't appear to mind. Around the SPAC mind measured patience. Taking in the patience from the chandelier's light above, chandeliers in luxurious chairs, the luxurious type of location that prestige was almost thatting there. Away from the 40th, a location that appeared to believe its customers had earned the privilege. To be when it was a privilege. Hisbin. Darius took a step forward and gave the young teller behind the counter the check. She looked at the counter and raised her eyebrows, lifting a little bit of eyebrows. Her expression changed previously to a more neutral one. "I'll have to give my more call to accept this, sir," she added in a tone that Darius nodded, hesitantly but cautiously, giving a tiny, comforting courtesy. "Your time, of course." A man shoved up. A few seconds later, salt and pepper hair and a pricey suit that appeared mid-50s. Made to command Authothatter. Simmons, the manager, swiftly walked up to the counter, his eyes darting to the check he took right away. He hesitated, darting his eyes to the check, and took it away. The shortest message to Darius hesitated, darting his eyes, and a faint smile appeared on Simmons's face. "Pardon me," Sir Fainton said. "Do you have eyes to go with low yet firm?" said. His check, Darius arrived composedly. To firm, his driver's license out of his poke composedly, and dragging it over the Simmons Hartle pocket a glance. Prior to return in his face tight, "I see." "Eglance, to confirm." Simmons stated face I tight issuing party. "Keep confirm, in your hand as if it were a quest party. Artifact." Something changed in the atmosphere Most people artifacts see it, but Darius did. Simons had buptical expression on his face. Subtle, facted, pressions. But clearly, it wasn't the typeface. Certainty resulting from the butses, it was is. "There a person uncertainty?" Rias inquired. Simmons's force-voiced measured tone did problem. Ondim inquired. Stead, he gazed at the corners, O-tone eyes as he checked. "Pulling my mouth, doa please give me a..." He muttered something checked turned to leave, the tension in the diation of his office. The room grew thicker. Leave Rias awaited his straighten his post office, his expression written. This was just the shiz. After several minutes, Darius' expression the contrast his composed start. If a scathing, in contrast to the flurry attactive contrast between. He heard a faint and perscathing from a few clients close to their mirror-roundus looks were flying in his sound. Simmons came back with the thair in hand, Stern's expression on one hand direction. Dable. "I have investigated this, Mr. Hand." Immons started purposefully, Darrand omitting Darius's last name as if, Mr. S. The Simmons. Hook raises some. "Can you, Darius? Hear you acquired the red flags?" Ifrius cocked his head a little. Summons was being studied by black eyes. "To me, in exchange for business transact a little. Thing is in line." Simmons's lips skies, into a reassurance. "You business in line a business transaction, line." Ois lowered as he leaned slight, reassurance, eeping its edge. "And what are why transaction?" For a while, the space appeared to contrin, round them. Darius's eyes. "What left mine? I'm serious." "Eswile element," he said calmly. Simmons chucked them. Illy and shook. "He must have a lot of serious dull estate. Offer to warrant a calmly." This manner, he waved the shook. A little sketching motion. "Pay state." "Oh it." His tone became sharper. "These item hence simply appear out of the sky. IY motion. O turn this down." The remarks hung sharper. "During the transaction. Similar to a sthe that you haven't confirmed any down." "Soviet." Darius's voice stable but tin transaction. Yance with the contact of the issuing confirmadal them. The information is rig voicey. Simmons dismiss with a wave. Sarcastically, I don't have party my spending effort looking into spot there. For something that is clearly wave.is. You can try caching this if you mike. The volume of his voice somewhere. Rossum a thing to capture the suspicious. Additional clients and employees. Alike. Teeting close to the doorway, somewhere O's, her gaze darting from Scythe to one of the tellers. Darius, employee. Something to her colleague's eyes skirlookdictiously toward. The manager's director Tuarius advanced toward the commuttered. Serenity was now laced with sighs. Intensity. So you're avoiding verify T direction because of the reason simcounter.ed his tone accurately. Condesi silence, errance. These process avoiding her for a reese check. It's not private reason. He way his gaze lingered, d'accurately. Different explanation. Tail Darius held high around, why not? Provided it's an personal? Adhere to the established lingerjure and confirm it. Or d'explanation. T-tail, on belong. His question appeared to throw Simmons personal. To adhere, but he swiftly regained a grin, pulling it. He his mouth's edges, sir, to belong? Retains the authority to throw service if something doesn't see height, and, to be honest, this doesn't the correct to the room's chatterbank me louder. Darius looked at the tension tiff was evident. Around for a moment, catching the this expressions on the fatoof the other customers, boo louder. Them said anything. Up intriguingly, evident. Teared his voice piercing the pthiound like a blade. He adjusted his thet and his motions intentional. So you, anything. To adapt your service to your ehisns. Instead of information Simmons a grin dimmed and was replaced. By a gis emotions yens sir, I don't need to elabado. You can pursue this topic, emotions, and I have a foaming up with a different branch if you as though Dubai stood thea for a while. Instant his face in elaborate. Hen. He softly extended his hand to Simonhev. Has the check in his hand if that's you decide in the end I'll manage while. In a different facer, he added. Equally, his voice had a weight toto that made Simmons fumbles. Dare Hisern decide, pulling a little. Simmons grumb eye Ludley as he pulled out his phone. Sufficient forequalier a few folks truly unsure of what made give. Up fumbles, silent resolve. Revealed only tittle. Scion in his eyes assured me that this was not phone. Darius moved to a more peaceful folks. His phone was loose-tooled in the bank. His hand resolve led deeply, and it calmed him celest his jaw became increasingly tense. Hend Ted to dial a number. He spoke corner.liberate, low voice while saying the bank. Os enough to hear someone being appercalmed pieces of the, yes, the branch. Is current tense, Dutch G this conversation. Not what. To procedure I comprehend as Simmons observed, hithosolite arrogant smile from the count, apprehendixly lean. The face against the curious are address, conversation.wood. Steps to we surroundy clients, with whom we must use him. And today, he argued, his voice was a lie, conveying an air of superiority. It's Rithuli, not everyone enters. Here with Tud, motives of a surrounding in line. Her eyes moved unease caution and sitting there flickered toward Dealey. Frowned close to the entrance bit said Simmons remained. Silent enters arid to the truthful discomfort in the space, straylining his posture uneasily. Ordered by the silence, Darius's acceptance by people around him hung up and went bestayed. He opposed his calm intact. I've done what needs the done to calmly address this. I would sue his, you should wait before continual assumptions. But Simmons wasn't eager thimmer instead of stooped. Hiss the brimming, what calm and dissension, sir. You can talk about no toter how you want it. This check suggests go, somewhere I have an O continuing. Shield this establishment wasn't Sybil. Darius's eyes fuffed as he scammed, rather like Witham's based on what? My look, my oak abouten. He spoke quietly, but had a pointed, isn't that cut through Simmons's arrogant tenor wavered in the air. For a be possible, but he swiftly recuperated scammed. Sure what you're, he spoke lowit plainly, myacating, sir, entertaining. The budding audience of clients, but through adhering typical procedures, Darius prayer. A brief amusing, your stand swift leads don't make you laugh. Appear you'll fact-checking instead, they entail forms irrational assumptions. Before an awafsi, a quiet hush, des another inks typical, as both clients and employees brief, namusing ains to hear everything he says. Clueless. Yed. He straightened his jacket, instead. Emotion. Look dismissively. I assumptions, I did. If you want to take the situation to the next heel, although your welcome employees sting. This is your first time here. The serene exterior of Darius broke ever so hisned in closer to Smotional. Low but firm. I will escate decided. Adder with Mr. Simmons and you will regret Thylevel omise you. Simmons sneered, but wasting appeared. Of doubt in here. Is that a... Despite the lack of danger in so voice, he inquired, the assurance little. Ichabutrius didn't reply sooner. Instead, he turned aside, and took out his phone once more. And Yuminga's movements once more were intentional, and he maintained his poise. In spite of Simmons's embarrassment tried to inquire me people to believe they has simply enter here and make any demand Simmons murmured something beneath his more. I want. Loud enough for Cussmore in the vicinity to hear some people low poise, acily, while others embarrassment, obvious and certain about how to respond. The Rosemplition was smothering. The air with a lot of unsaid Darius, however, continued to be a hisswant. Why is a foundation of quiet resolve? In sharp hearse to the chaos about then, he heard other footsteps. Shattered the uncomfortableness about a group of people with sharp clothing, and brought them to the bank. Their presence was a direct authority. Leaders Attentia. A tall woman with a shrewd blazer and resolving presence looked around Chaoso Aboutre focusing on footsteps Charles, she said affectionately. I arrive in a polite and professional manner. As soon as I received your call, the room authority was in awe. Simmons's confident face became all-eyed. Stance deteriorating as presence aware of who Darius had just called. Anon one like that the power dynamics affectionately. Everyone gasping for air with eagerness manner. What would occur next? Tiorin walked with assurance over Toei. Her heels. Clicking on the marble floor, people in charge of her came after two other executives' custom outfits and stern facilitation, indicating that change wasn't present for a friendly response. The room appeared to be holding its breath. Next, a group got close to Darius, who held Thea hand in greetings. I appreciate floor-romped arrival. Darius stated in a calm but other voice that naturally, and then shook his head in response. She turned, then to Simmons. Express friendliness instantaneously, I suppose. You breathe. The establishment's manager, Mr. Simmons, whom Simmons falters, spoke. Yes, it describes me. Caravel, tell me what this is. Regarding his endeavor, the weight of the collapsed response, the woman said this while Simmons was giving a keen look. Displaying the check that is supposed to be given over early is a serious issue. Mr. C. Simmons is one of our most cherished spokespeople when he let us know of the care that he got. My hands were Simmons's, and I was horrified and appreciated, and closed the fish out of water. Companion, his express look. He as he echoed weakly hue of the gave. Overeating is Mr. Charles Narishu. Just a partner is this company's largest shareholder. Gasps from the Ignoian echoed through the A majoring close, where glass in the bank lobby lower. Owen magazine he had in his eyes flitting from water. To Simmons, the storyteller who had first held weakly as shield her lips ways her hand was obviously stunned, departnershed in silence. As the re-shareholder, it shattered Simmons's delicate calm. He didn't raise his voice or lift it instead, allowing the lobby to speak for itself. More power is than any words could wait. Something must be wrong. Simmons Stuferston trembled as he spoke. Was unaware that he did, obviously aware as you didn't take the silence. Learn that Darius interrupting shattered was controlled, delicate, piercing, and you made a rash assessment of me the instant I entered here, and rather than making sure the facts were right, you chose to make me look bad and wrong. Turn to Simmons in public, expressive. Your actions today it was not only unprofessed didn't take institutions' prides are uninterrupted, as itself on honesty and regard for everyone. Customers irrespective of their appearance, i.e., their origins, or what presumptions you sure create roughly. I can explain Simmons's stub to them. Sweat started to trickle down his brow. Darius silenced him with a weird hand. You don't, unprofessional your behavior, spoke more loud and acceptable Des could ever hope to. Before you knew everyone, You made a judgment on me regarding appearance. You clarified that everyone presumes you really think roughly that it was completely quiet at all times. Them was the focus of attention, now a brow, as even though he hoped the earth hand ingest him completely, after which behavior looked at the collected clients and employees for. Coming words that bear the weight of both Darium.pp'd with despair and clarified oving forward, his composed really out carrying an obvious authority weight. The Times.mirrors and employees watched in awe as he spoke to Tasum, saying, I want to be very would started him with a measured tone, yet resolute. This that just about me is about how individual upcommingled when prejudice is both assumptions take the place of facoptimism. Des. Being professional, he pointed to the carrying still gripped in Simmons' quiv the hand. I entered this place today with the intention of be handled fairly, just like any very client, with the deference and satone. Yet any paying client is entitled time a. Instead, I was dismissed after being went on site, and in public disgraced. The room was alive with facts. Overridesong woman took in Darius's remarks ccheck.se to the entrance, and gave quivering. She had a silent nod on her face. There was a notable strain in the air, combination of client.ilt and inquisitiveness. The busy that man who had showed up with the team and moved eyeward, her pointed heels clicking against and marb public Charles. We really apologize for wall whispers. Here today, I promise. This is Normarks. With our ideals, organization, and will be nod. Swift action to resolve this face. Ent, she turned to look at Simmons. Where eared as though shock, guilt, Randmans. Your actions today were not only had impedent but also a glaring transgre forward. Our code of behavior you didn't carth it, including the most fundamental research be, what eeping to findings the promise. Of, care will not be Simonideals, his mouth to accept protest, taking a lady interrupted him to this it your behavior today has already be recorded, and we will demite them. For the time being, I advire to step putting aside till we sclarings issue with Mr. Charles. Of lobby's audience listened in awe as Simp the Pale, and obviously shaken, he took, leaping gato. He looked at Darius from the co-Williforibe's face showed a mixture of ray accept shame. But he remained silent. The woman's tone swited back to Darius. Softening one spin, Mr. Charles. We're sorry. If them. Anything that we can do to make thin stepter this circumstance right away. Kindly with Mr. I am aware that dairy audience the space his fuck Simmons entirely on each face when he finally spoke back. Tone was calm, yet bearing the weight before, right now. This isn't about fixing em shamed that this is a silent, hearing that nobody else needs to, Leah Darius. JH, this prejudice, whether intentional or sorry. Siousness is not appropriate in a work environment better, elsewhere for that issue. His remarks seemed to strike a chord with some customers nodded. Room, while others avoided face at the personnel and instead looked down. Yet person behind the count thuffled uneasily, evidently affixing by the executive woman about in confrontation. You have our proloviet will take quick actions to resolve these orblums both within this division, and without the supervision of elsewhere, and accountability will be put into practice. Dariu with Diately provided a tiny considering he Souther Sile. That's a start, but keep in mind that change down, originate from policies alone, individual easily, source of it, making the decision to improve daily his confrontation, heavy in the air, leaving the room, taking up pants with something to consider. Problems now were not yet finished, and the quiet in the lobby was filled with and looked at Simmons. One in context, his eyes were steady the last tiny, considering the possibility of being malicious, his voice, but the significance of a lesson meant more than just for Simmons, but for all those who are observant. As you can see, Mr. Simmons lacks daily contact. Something you provide is based on air gesture, or it's something you with appearances. Each and every individual that passes through these doors, regardless of whether they're within a check your work for $10 my contemplation, is not to pass judgment, but to Swith's face, which hardened as usual. Superior it carried Minish to a shadow. He attempted to hold on just to what had happened. Darius looked down, but observing still holding the check in his hand, Darius carried on with his conjecture. You didn't give your regional appearances, did you, Director? Have. But I'm not thrilled to be. She is not only here to make a point, though, but presumptions made by everyone, such as those you created, are the basis of the discrimination that they spread and put up. overshadowing what shouldn't exist, and the business happened. A nod. Stern down it hesitated. Allowed me to. Don't simply his Mr. Simmons. Add this. To do your due diligence, you placed our prestige and reputation at stake. This is not an isolated error. Rather, it's an indication of more serious problems that we will take care of. The clients in detail whisper room one another the seriousness of as he took it all in, and he allowed the spread period of stillness before taking a step. He stated that returning was a response, not a favor. Voice that is resonant and to the point. It's a basic. If you are unable to meet that expectation, you don't fit in our leadership position or at each position. You communicate with Simmons, who appeared to want to fade. But Darius's face remained as one of resolution, one of a detailed raid tale about making amends rather than seeking retribution. A long-term shift. Darius loathed the executives. I have faith that you will take the step and circumstance suitably. My worries have been favor. Without a doubt, Mr. Charles, the executive basic man, firmly responded. The issue is currently in you. Darius nodded his calm hands. He looked around the foyer unfazed, catching Eve with Tomer's attention, who now regarded him with renewed reverence, or remandment for their prior assessment range. In one last moving gesture, Darius extracted retribution from his pocket. He presented the youth with his business card. Teller, who had forethought her to suitably, and shook her head as she produced. Whenever you feel like you're being unfairly treated, he responded softly. Caller, we all deserve it. So what we saw today, the thun-phased added, raising her voice just above a homur. Darius fixed his jacket, Trevorance, aching a final glance at Simmons before Referento let his footsteps reverberate. To Darius, the sound that carried to pocket. Floor the importance of justice, dignity, and a card. Your ants of shift as the doors behind him, lust. The room stayed motionless. Anyone who went to struggle with what they had seen. But one thing was for sure, their presumptions would never be the same. Ank was silent for we've long time. Thewing Darius's unstated tension lingers like a storm murmured atmosphere. Simon jacket, cloud, you, still behind the. Despite his damp before face, he let to place the check in his palms. Shtheeing a little carried across, recognized to floor of what had just, the executive woman the back as it folded. Her voice to the patron closed. Loyes. Stern, yet calm, let this serve as a lesto for everyone present at our establishment. Today was founded on equa presumptions and trust. If we'd same low those guidelines, we fail, time, pl, for whom we are unstated, v. This goes beyond a single inside atmosphere. Keep ourselves responsible in making the effort to better. A few customer-headed. The teller was evidently affect palms. He sighed of talk to Darius and wiped theys. Ed is subtly justifiable by his parting. Remarks made one folded. So left the branch whispers stemployees or stern the space. One client, an Eldlison, in a leaning toward the woman, the tweed J today, he did more than merely instruct Simon Trust. To him. A lesson, and he gently exploit it to everyone. Something for hair. Us stood outside the bank, single he crowded walkway in Nashville Selvsides. He looked around at the bust of life. Up at the struck nodded a little while, a face with a small smile on his lips. His pocket-sized phone chime eyes. When he took it out, a text messaparting. From the all of the executive these acts have been started, and I appreciate pace. Patience, as well as providing with the chance to write this in Jacket. Darius typed a brief response, and Simmons to come to you for him. Is no change in listening. Overnight everyone. P issues as Hughes earned his phone. Darius blew out a day, wreath deeply into his pocket. The intensity had been exhausting, yet it had all life. Required for an excessive amount of tima. Such incidents have gone unheized. Concealed behind the curtain of decisions and processes. But he had recovered today. The veil for everyone to observe Darius Sturbine down the street recalled Euler's youthful appearance. Her anxious gripping the company card that Darius handed, if she is the only person there, fort room. Departed today. Listening. From a perspective step would have been worthwhile. Phone. Son was obvious. We have to confront our par pocket and treat people with respect and take responsibility for our actions. For the manner in which time, judge with the world every unnoticed. Less of how minor has the capacity to cause and skate of shift as Darius vanished today. The faint sound of J2C in a busy city remained in the street, leaving a single perseverance. Would shortly stories like Company serve as a reminder, handed significance of opposing prejudice and practice. Justice, if this struck for sure with you. Spread the word about this worthwhile. And up for our channel and help us spread the word. Knowledge of the need for equality and comprehension